many, and LA is known for its sort of, you know, glitzy, star, people are drawn here who are seeking that energy, I think a lot. And so particularly like, oh, how big is your following and how, and all that nonsense. And, the way I put it to people is that which is like unto itself is drawn. Water seeks its own level. For you and I to have this conversation, I believe out of 7 billion people on the planet or whatever, it's like hitting the lotto 100 times in a row or something. It's so unlikely that we bump up against one another in this world. And the reason I believe we're bumping up against each other in this world is because there's such a vibrational match.
Welcome to Connecting with Coincidence. I'm your host. You remember me, some of you. My name is Bernie Beitman, and I love studying coincidences, and otherwise known as synchronicities and serendipities. And I'm going to start off with a story about a couch, and you'll see why, because our guest started off his story with a couch. Because couches can be creative spaces. My very good friend Leslie Ann is moving to China and needed a place to store her pink, beautiful couch. When the couch arrived, she wasn't there. She brought it when I wasn't here into my house in the basement. I was struck by the energy in that couch because it felt like her energy. It felt like Leslie Ann's energy. I said, wow. And she said she recognized that too after she dropped it off, that her energy was there. And she couldn't see that when the couch was in her house. So I started to have conversations with the couch because I go downstairs and watch TV at night, and I'd stop by the couch. And how did we have a conversation? Well, the couch's energy would bump into me. She would send energy to me, would have a certain feeling to it, and that would be the communication. So I would go down there, and at first it was really intense, but then we got used to each other, the couch and I, and we'd send information back and forth with each other and have little discussions. I'd tell her what happened with Leslie Ann, and the couch knew it, but I'd tell her anyway. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I was talking with a couch. And yes, we do have a relationship. It's real. I asked the couch, for example, if I should give Leslie Ann a certain card. I'd written some stuff on the card about her leaving, and it was a very loving card because I love this person. And her couch energy bumped me a big yes. I'd ask the couch about whether I should talk to Leslie Ann about Leslie Ann to a friend of Leslie's, and the couch said no. Boom, no. Okay, so we got I just give you an idea that it's almost every night that we have some kind of interchange. Well, our guest today found inspiration while living on a friend's couch.
Right. That's funny.
His name is Brandon Beachum, and he's been a serial entrepreneur since childhood. And in 2011, while living on a friend's couch, he co-founded what is present-day Resort Share. In 2015, Resort Share was named the 569th fastest growing private company in America in the annual 5,000 fastest growing companies list. That same year, Brandon began focusing on his greatest passion, exploring consciousness and the ultimate nature of reality. I'm doing that too, Brandon. What is this? What is going on around here?
What the heck is happening here?
Yeah. So he has the Positive Head podcast.
Yep.
which was quickly met with critical acclaim, and it has consistently rated in the top 5 in the spirituality category on iTunes, Apple Podcasts for several years, and for several years, he's amassed over 15 million downloads. Brandon is now also stewarding Positive Head's epic evolution on the new late night style consciousness elevating variety show, Optimistic. That's spelled Opta, Optimistic. So he's a word player. You
Indeed.
get that idea. Brendan, I am a metaphysician. I'm a doctor who likes metaphysics. So you probably like that. That goes along with. So I'm a metaphysician.
Yeah, I
He
love that.
he achieved all of this through application of the empowering perspectives he shares on the pages of the Golden Key and the positivehead.com website, which you'll be able to see in the list below. So, Brandon, welcome to the show. And as I asked you at the beginning, why did you want to be on this show with me?
Yeah, yeah, great question. And my answer to you was, when I think of a friend when he sees me for the first time, anytime he sees me, he instantly sings out, "Mr. Synchronicity." So I am the biggest kid ever when it comes to synchronicity, serendipity, that sort of thing. Spiritual breadcrumbs. I have quite a few. I mean, instantly when we connected, I'm like, oh, you're a BB. I'm a BB. I'm Brandon B. You're a BB. Oh, where are you from? Oh, Virginia. Oh, I'm from Virginia. Oh, by the way, I had my first ever feel like might have been a connection with a past life / parallel self a few weeks back, and his name was Bernard. And so, yeah, that was my answer, my short answer for you.
Well, that's quick. And the fun of that is that I'm now in the process of getting a book published, which is about the synchronicities of my life.
Mhm.
I wanted to call it The Adventures of Dr. Coincidence in Synchronicity Land.
I love
That's what,
that.
and so do a lot of people I tell that to. The book company doesn't like that. They have a much blander title,
Mhm.
A Doctor's Life-Changing Synchronicity or something like
Mm.
that. Uh,
Ah,
and they accuse me of like wanting to create a cult around Dr. Coincidence, which is only close because I'm really trying to create a comic book character that's Dr.
mm,
Coincidence. But
I like that.
I'm Dr. Coincidence, and just for the fun of your telling this about you being Mr. Synchronicity, a friend of mine was in Goa, in a part of India, um, and she sees a guy walking along with a T-shirt you might want to get, Brandon,
Yeah.
called Mr. Synchronicity on his
Wow.
T-shirt,
Oh, wow.
Mr. Synchronicity, and so she says, "Hey, do you know Dr. Coincidence?" And the guy says, "You mean Dr. Beitman?"
Wow, that's amazing.
So we are already, you and I, starting to intertwine here in a really fun way. So
Hmm.
I'm gonna leave this open now to you to just talk about you and your synchronicity and what it all means to you and the stories you might want to tell us.
Sure, sure. Yeah, it's really a trip. To me, the way I see it is, we're all the lead actor, director, star in our own private YOU universe. And it's everywhere I go, I'm there waiting for myself. It's reflecting me back to me in some way, shape, or form. And the more I perceive my reality through that lens, the more it affirms itself. I having done this the Positive Head podcast for going on 10 years, and have had incredible guests, and some of the most well-known luminaries and thought leaders and teachers and what have you. um I've heard a lot of stories. I always ask for a story, over 2,400 episodes now, I think. I always ask my guests for a story of synchronicity, serendipity, positive paranormal story. It's like a go-to for, almost 10 years. I've heard a lot of stories. And one of the things, and I've come across a lot of people who have a lot of interesting, I spoke to a woman a few days ago and she channeled some information from my guides, which, by the way, they came through with a really awesome synchronistic validation that there was indeed something going on there beyond the veil. I can share that, but that's really one of the most recent. Oh my gosh, that was so cool. But um, I've come across a lot of things and a lot of gifts and people who claim to interact with extraterrestrials and, all the things. And for me, I haven't had, I haven't sat down with my spirit guides. I haven't been on a alien ship, traversing the astral realm that I recall. What I do have on my spiritual journey is very potent synchronicities and serendipities that oftentimes are very layered and very like, really as jaw dropping as any I've come across. And so that, when you ask about me, in the from Virginia, where you're at originally, and had my own spiritual awakening in the mid 90s, and now on a 25-year or so journey exploring the ultimate nature of reality. That's been, sort of my experience of lots of those sorts of stories pretty consistently. And just, I think, marveling at them. One of the only Bible verses I will quote is, I think there's some great wisdom there. I consider myself not religious per se, but I think there's some great wisdom. And one of the quotes is, "Unless you become like a child, you can't enter the kingdom of heaven." And that is what I think is happening with that childlike wonder and excitement. No matter what our physical age, we're excited, you and I, about meaningful coincidences and synchronicities and serendipities. And I think that creates the container and the energy for more of them to come through. So yeah, I had my own awakening in the mid 90s where it's like, oh my gosh, of course I'm one with the source consciousness that creates and animates all things. How else could this be structured? And I can only think it was such a profound like aha for me, because it is my dharmic path to do the work that I do, talking about this stuff to anyone who will listen. And so then it's been, a journey of 25 years of, okay, it's one thing to understand this stuff theoretically. It's another thing to really apply, the knowledge in a meaningful way. As Mike Tyson says, everyone's got a plan till you get punched in the face. And life tends to punch you in the face quite a bit in order to make you, into that skilled sailor that requires, seas that aren't always smooth to become a skilled sailor, right? Smooth seas never made for a skilled sailor. And so I think that's really been my journey, is like awakening and sharing, teaching best what I most need to learn along the way. And a big part of that has been sharing the synchronicities and serendipities and so forth.
I'm with you on trying to use synchronicities, serendipities, meaningful coincidences to understand the nature of reality. That's been my intent also. So what I'm doing now is starting to collaborate with somebody to use artificial intelligence to see patterns in coincidence stories.
Cool.
And if you've got a collection of stories written down someplace, not just spoken, they might be useful if you will want to contribute them to what we're doing. And particularly would be interesting is not just across like multiple different people stories, but your own stories. If you have written down your own stories, have you?
I have documented some of them in my book, The Golden Key, which, I'm happy to also share with the audience as a gift. But yeah, I've written quite a few of them in the book.
Okay, so Golden Key is got a lot of your stories. So because I'm looking at using AI to answer some of the question of what is the nature of, I'm saying Earth reality. I'm not trying to get out of Earth right now. It's confusing and complicated enough right now, right here.
Sure.
Uh,
Sure.
and I think of something called the psychosphere, which is our mental atmosphere, through
Mm,
which a lot of synchronicities are facilitated.
yeah.
Telepathy is one of them, but there are many other events where you think of something, you have a need, and it's met
Yeah.
somehow out of nowhere. Uh, and what you are seeking is seeking you. And
Right.
I want to be able to explain those things, and the psychosphere becomes one way to do it, and AI becomes a way to make it more solidified.
Cool.
What
I
do you
love
think of
that
that?
idea. I think that's a brilliant idea, and I'd love to contribute however I can. And I have a lot of them that are not written down. I mean, they just, they happen so frequently. Um, so it's like, the other day well, if you want, I'll share the most recent one that kind of had
Yeah,
my jaw.
yeah. Please do share the most recent.
Can I ask you a question though? I'm curious. What is your birthday?
22742.
227. Got it. Got it. I am always curious when I see a lot of overlap with someone, because I have a lot of synchronicity with my birthday is one example. Um, I'll share that one and then I'll share the most recent. So, birthday example. My father was 28 and had me on his birthday, July 28th. Um, and so we have the same birthday. It's also his grandmother's birthday, my great grandmother's birthday. Her mother, my great great, died on that day. My ex business partner and villain I write about in my hero's journey tale in the Golden Key, his baby's mother and grandmother, July 28th. I met what I would say is definitely like a soulmate energy in this life on July 28th, 2012, on my birthday. And she was there with a good girlfriend, and so she became my partner. And then I learned her boyfriend before me's name was Anson. And all my relatives with that July 28th birthday on my dad's side are from Anson, North Carolina. Now, this girlfriend, guess when her Anson committed suicide? Guess what day? July 28th.
Same.
And it goes on and on. That meeting, the girlfriend and her friend, the friend, Michelle was her name, had three good girlfriends. The first one that I met that day became my partner for a year and a half. The next one, I saw her and knew that she was a future partner. We were together several years. And then my current partner all came from that meeting on July 28th, 2012. Over the last 12 years, all my last three partners all came from that, that meeting. And that story continues to, I mean, there's more and more, that's about half of it. It just continues to unfold. I run a co-living and event space in LA. Someone moved in with July 28th as their birthday. It was my shadow on, like fully a shadow version of myself that I had to deal with. And once I cleared and got it, I almost shut the whole place down over this person. And once I cleared the energy and they did move out and I got the lesson that the universe wanted me to get, like, it was almost like a tornado hit. Not a tornado, that's strong, but a strong windstorm hit. I live in Los Angeles. We don't get that. And it blew things off my balcony and everything the day he left within hours of him leaving. So I felt like I cleared some real karmic stuff there. But that's one example. And like I said, there's so many parts to the July 28th unfolding. I don't even share it all anymore. I did have someone for the first time ever on Positive Head give me, it hasn't even been released yet, this episode, give me a channeling message from my guides, supposedly. And I always approach these things with like, I'm open, I think, we'll see how potent the information there is or if there's evidence there. I try not to just take I'm healthily skeptical to such things too still. And she gave me some insight into my birthday and said it's basically, she went into some detail. It'll be on a future episode of Positive Head, but it was very insightful. And then,
What did you learn?
well, here's a synchronicity for you. The day before I talked to her, and now she's in a channeled state. I'm talking to my guides and my higher self supposedly, and I say, "Look, this birthday thing is a trip. I've been, is there any insight you can give me?" I'd asked an intuitive years ago, and she said, "I'm going to drop in and tell you." So I think I'm going to hear some interesting past life stuff, and I she came back and said, "Oh, all I got was that you're going to keep seeing it. Oh, and by the way, I found this survey they did in England a few years ago to try and determine the best day to be born. And guess what the conclusion was?" So instead of getting this profound answer, I got, "Oh, you're going to see more of it. And here's a news article that says July 28th is the most fortuitous day to be born," which is silly as can be. But it was kind of like I felt like, a cosmic giggle, like messing with me. So that was the closest I got to getting any insight. And then a few days ago, I had this woman on and she goes into a channeled state. Now, the day before I'm talking to her in this channeled state, I saw a clip on Instagram from a spiritual teacher who said, he's like, "I want to talk about," the whole clip was the 1728 phenomenon. And so, of course, it caught my eye. It's like, there's my 728 and a 1 on it. And I'm like, and he's like, "Well, what happens is the 1 separates into 12, and that's the oversoul, 12 oversouls." So it's, and he's basically saying the template for our parallel lives is this: you go into 12 oversouls, then 12 souls, and then 12 what did he put it, like disciples of each soul, kind of. He's comparing it to the Christos line kind of thing. And he said, so 12 times 12 times 12 gives you 11728, and that's how many parallel lives you have. And I'd never heard or seen this concept, so I was like, "Oh, interesting, maybe that's, it's tied to the template of humanity." So here I am the next day, this woman's channeling for me. First thing that she really got me, she's talking about my journey. And now it was the day before was Father's Day, and my mother made me, I have a son, and so my mother made me my favorite dessert for Father's Day, which is blackberry cobbler, right, from Virginia. That's a kind of a southern sort of thing. Here in LA, it's not something you see a lot of. And so the last thing I'd eaten the night before was blackberry cobbler. So this woman's channeling for me, starting to give me this information, and then she goes, "Your guides are showing me that you're like a really delicious berry cobbler that has been bubbling over." And she went in, and I mean, she basically called me a berry cobbler, and that had been the last food I had eaten. So instantly I'm like, okay, there's really something here, right? What a cool connection. So she went on to say, when I asked about the birthday thing, she goes, "What they're showing me is, I've never seen anything like this. It's like a wrinkle in space-time. These numbers, this date represents energetically. It's like the template for humanity in some way," which is what I just seen the day before in this, this guy's 12 times 12 times 12. And so it's like a wrinkle in space-time, like a pinch in space-time, and you're a steward of this portal beyond your human life. So that's why you're so intimately tied to this day and this, and somehow it ties to the template of humanity. So not even knowing, I just seen this first concept ever in all these years, even that kind of made me scratch my head, like, oh, maybe this is something to it, So yeah, that was
maybe there's something to what? I'll summarize it, because you said a lot of stuff there.
I did. Yeah. Well, maybe there's something to this 1728 thing I had seen. The fact I'd seen it, and it's just some random person on Instagram that popped up on my feed. I'm like, oh, this 12 times 12 times 12 concept is an interesting one, over soul to individuals. Maybe so. I can't say I've been shown that's how things are templated, right? But then when the next day you go into a channeled session and she goes, "Oh, it's tied to this template of humanity in some way." And, it's like, oh, okay, that's an interesting, I just saw a template tying in 728 yesterday that I'd never heard or seen of before. So it got me.
What I'm asking about is not so much 1728. or even July 28th. I'm asking about you. I'm asking about the sense that you're giving me of your being in the center of something,
Mhm.
like the center of a cyclone, the center of a connecting linker.
Yeah.
Uh, there's something already I'm picking up about you, that stuff is flowing through you, lots of stuff from the top, from the sides, from the bottom, going boom, 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 boom,
Yeah.
boom. And just to
Right.
make it more fun, I'm going to
Right.
the dentist today
Hmm.
because I cracked an already weakened tooth on a seed from a fresh blackberry.
Oh, wow. No way. Wow. What? It's wild. I mean, what?
Well, let's not do the wild right there and be amazed for, because this happens to you, it happens to me.
Yeah.
Maybe not as much. And what I'm trying to do is say, okay, I'm talking to a guy who comes to me from no place, and I'm really feeling, because I pick up vibes myself and get a sense for
Hmm.
somebody's energy. I'm quite sensitive to energy in various forms.
Sure.
And you are in the middle, I'm going to call it, of a cyclone, where you have to maintain some stability in the midst of a lot of stuff coming at you. And the BlackBerry one, was just like on my side, a confirmation of a connection that I can feel with you as you are on your journey of, in at least in part, using meaningful coincidences as a way of understanding reality.
Yeah, yeah, and it's interesting you talk about it as a cyclone sort of thing, and that's what she went on to say. She's like, it's sort of like this portal that you go into, and people around you that are connected to you are going to have some connection to it a lot too, because
Mhm.
and it's really important that as you go into it, she goes, it can create beautiful, like really intense, concentrated manifestations or chaos, either or. And it's really important that as you go into it and come out of it, that you're really clear, because it's potent in both directions. And so actually navigating it becomes of the utmost importance to get the results.
I can't agree with you more, because I'm in that myself right now, and I'm writing a different thing. I tend to stay home and work on stuff. I write books. Uh,
Hmm.
I have my own podcast and stuff, Psychology Today thing that I'm doing. I have formed the Coincidence Project, which we're meeting next week in Chicago for the first time. There's a
Cool.
lot that I'm in the middle of in trying to like do this. And I'm a kind of an academically recognized leader in the study of synchronicity. That's what my role now has become. And
Cool.
and I'm looking at you as out there, more out there than I am, and kind of like having stuff swirling in and out of you, kind
Hmm.
of like that image behind you. There's a
Yep.
central crystal, as I see it, and a lot of swirling, and there's a tree of life for me, that of which that crystal is kind of part of the root, and it's going up.
The,
And what we're talking about is something like your, and for me too, being that crystal in the middle of the swirl, which is not just a surface, it's a spiral. And that spiral is continuing to go up, and that we need to be able to be stabilized, breathe, meditate, eat well, exercise, keep
ground it.
ground, be among people whose energy you can like manage, and they kind of are helpful. All those things that I imagine you've already learned you're learning still how to do,
I'm
but have
learning. It's a
it's
lot to wrangle.
well, the
Uh,
trouble is that the more expanded we get, the more nuance there is to have to deal with. It's not like
it's a
it's
little more complex in some ways. I think that's part of, the journey of the soul is, this increased complexity as you level up. And we're in training for that. And it's funny that you mentioned this picture, because this energetically represents the biggest spiritual breadcrumb story I've ever had, that has unfolded over what, almost 20 years. And it's a painting representation of a project that I've been guided very strongly to steward. I did a first version of it in 2009 and then sort of put it aside. And that's when I had my success with my first company that you talked about. And now I'm being guided to bring it back with a lot of synchronicity. And it's called Industry, spelled Tree. And so that's what you see, the tree with all the sort of evolution, excuse me, going up the trunk and turning into, you know, heaven on earth through the tree sort of thing. So yeah,
Well, let's pause on that for a minute, because
sure.
definitely that's one idea of what being in 5D is, the heaven on earth thing. And the person that I mentioned, who gave me the couch would have been destroyed. It had
Yeah.
a near-death experience, but I took it. We love each other in 5D,
Mm,
not here, not in
mm,
3D. And there's a lot of
right.
3D. And that's been my experience of 5D, is to try to recognize that we can have heaven on earth here if we behave ourselves in a spiritually, psychological, and interpersonal way.
Yeah.
And I'm most concerned about how people don't get along with each other, Brandon.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm wondering, as I'm writing a book called The Psychotherapy for the Collective Human Organism, Psychotherapy for the Collective Human Organism,
Mm,
how is it that you are addressing this major human problem of not knowing how to love, not knowing how to receive love, and all the awful stuff we tend to do each other when we're all part of the same thing?
yeah. That's quite the question. Um, I think it was Ram Dass said it really well. He said, "All I can do for you is work on myself. All you can do for me is work on yourself." And I think I don't know if that's all I can do, but the
It isn't.
sentiment,
It isn't.
the sentiment I like is like, it's the most foundational, important thing is to be it, you know, and
And I am getting more and more frustrated with people saying just that,
hmm hmm
because it is a form of, if you just do that, to me, and I'm interested in your response, is a form of spiritual bypassing.
fair, yeah, and that's why I kind of said, like, look, I don't fully agree, but the idea as a foundation is very important. And when you ask what I'm personally doing, this is a representation. One is I've stepped out. I've 10 years ago, and whoever would listen to me talk wax poetic about consciousness and the ultimate nature of reality. And I got to say, it's the most rewarding thing I've ever had. I mean, I've had thousands of people reach out and say, "Oh my gosh, I started tuning in, and I was suicidal and nothing could help me. And now I've completely, by tuning in 5 days a week to Positive Head, I have completely shifted my life." And and I give some credit to you. And that to me has been the most rewarding work and feedback I've
Wonderful,
ever gotten.
wonderful, 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 wonderful.
Yeah, it really has. And with industry that I referenced is a conscious art community, a DAO. I don't know how familiar you are with blockchain technology, but
Some, some,
so it's a decentralized autonomous organization, the most purest form. There's a lot in that space, but it's basically, I have been called through extreme synchronicity and someone who claimed to be a time traveler and everything else to create this DAO or catalyze this DAO that is owned by the people, and it allows artists, specifically music at first, to co-own with fans and create community around it. So that's a project that I'm just starting. I did the first version in 2009 after being led by very intense spiritual breadcrumbs or synchronicity. And it was like, MySpace at the time meets Spotify. Before Spotify, I had my own token called Blooms before cryptocurrency that I paid people out in. And I was sort of ahead of my time in some ways with it. And now I'm being led to bring it back. So the podcast industry forthcoming. And, I run a co-living and event space here in Los Angeles. We call the Mystic Manor. And so we do regular, community event. It's sort of a hub for conscious community in Los Angeles. And we've been doing, we do these kind of 250 person gatherings every 8 to 10 weeks for the last few years. I was filming my late night style show Optimistic here. And now we just launched last week what we call Mystic Society, which is like a regular gatherings every 2 weeks or so, just to bring community together and network, and how can we support each other and highlight someone in the community and the work that they're doing, and document that and share it with the world. So those are the sort of the things that I'm doing to try and have the greatest ROI in life possible, ripple of impact. And so those are the things in my hat, and I'm doing my best to wrangle them and be, really ground things. As you can see, I'm pretty excitable, and how do I ground it as much as possible? So you're good energy for me to connect with in that way, and I appreciate that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And I like your energy, Brandon. I like your energy. I'm trying to imagine, what did you call this mystical space?
The Mystic Manor.
The Mystic Manor. I love that.
Yeah. It's beautiful. You can check out Mystic Manor LA on Instagram, and you can see, or mysticmanor.la website, and you'll see kind of the property and the events and all that stuff.
It's I had my first acid experience near USC one midnight, and I have a little feel for LA as a result.
Yeah.
I never had any mind altering drugs until then, so
wow.
I have a bit of a fondness for LA, but I also don't like LA because I lived in San Francisco for 6 years, so the competition.
Yeah, right. LA has a lot here. There, you can find it all. And what I am really proud of is holding down sort of a beacon for conscious community in LA. And there's a lot of it. It's really grown in recent years, even, and so we'll have these 250, 300 person events, and everyone is it's in a residential area, which is questionable, with neighbors and all those things, and everyone's so mindful. And so, we don't serve alcohol, which helps. and it's just like I look around at these events and be like, wow, I must be doing something right, because these people are beautiful inside and out, and it doesn't mean there's not challenges, there's not, any darkness there, but it's the people who are doing the work and are committed and are remembering, coming back together with other parts of themselves and understanding, we're here to become our greatest and grandest version of ourselves.
Well, when you get people together, inevitably their shadows emerge.
Yeah.
However enlightened and on the path towards spiritual development they might be.
Right.
Tell me, please, how you or they or everybody manages when jealousy, competition starts raising its head, because it's usually inevitable in groups.
It is in stack ranking, and how many, and LA is known for its sort of, glitzy, star, people are drawn here who are seeking that energy, I think, a lot. And so particularly like, oh, how big is your following, and how, and all that nonsense. And, the way I put it to people is that which is like unto itself is drawn. Water seeks its own level. For you and I to have this conversation, I believe out of 7 billion people on the planet or whatever, it's like hitting the lotto 100 times in a row or something. It's so unlikely that we bump up against one another in this world. And the reason I believe we're bumping up against each other in this world is because there's such a vibrational match that it can transpire. So what I really try and share the perspective of this with people, it's very easy to turn into competition and like, oh, social media is a great example of this. Look at how beautiful they are. Look at how great their life is. Look at, they're sharing the highlight reel. They're, putting on the filters. They're, I could never do that. I could never have that many followers. I could never be that pretty. I could never. And instead of creating separation in that way, in that mindset, what I say is if you see something that you admire or like or want more of, instead of creating separation, what if you told the story of, oh, I'm so closely resonant with the vibration of what this person represents, that it's actually appearing in my movie, my life, right? It's such a close vibrational match. It's drawing closer because that which is like unto itself is drawn. Water seeks its own level. It's not competition. It's oh wow, I love that. That's even getting closer to being in my world, that I'm seeing it out of the infinite things vying for my precious attention, right? So, yeah, that's how one of the ways I think the story that we tell is everything. Abracadabra translates to I create as I speak. Our words are our wands. We're literally spelling, casting a spell. And so, what story are you telling around this person that you might otherwise try and create competition with? It's like, rising tide raises all ships, right? How can I lift you up? How can I appreciate what you represent? And it's not, for me, I don't have that. It's like, oh, yay, it's getting closer. I want more of what he's got or she's got. And so I think that really helps to refocus the perspective in a way that is serving you as opposed to creating more separation.
Now, I'm doing that with you right now, Brandon. I really like how you are developing yourself.
Oh, thank you.
And
That's such a beautiful compliment. Thank you for saying that.
you're welcome. And I am doing that with you. I have a podcast. I look at numbers, look stuff like that. And you're helping me turn right now what feelings of competition I might have with you.
Yeah.
Because you're doing some amazing things. The Mystic Manor I really like the Mystic Manor among other things
Well, I hope you can
that
come visit sometime and experience the community. You would
I
love it.
really, I'm almost there right now, kind of in a spiritual or somehow telepathic or future oriented way. You've invited me, and now you're making it direct. And what I'm looking for at Mystic Manor is to do some five rhythms dancing. Uh,
Oh, well, it's already happening in a future now. I see it. There's some beautiful music and musicians and things that come through. My vision is ultimately sort of, you mentioned San Francisco, Haight-Ashbury, and you were around back at that time. What a beautiful time where, this renaissance of psychedelics and, creative, you hear stories of, oh yeah, I was at this event and over in the corner was the Grateful Dead, and over here was the Beatles, and and so my vision for Mystic Manor is 50 years from now, we'll look back and say, oh my gosh, I was at Mystic Manor when Bernard was there, and this artist was there just making their start, and I got to hang out with all these mystics, and so that's the vision of what it will evolve into,
Well, you're talking to someone who saw Jerry Garcia strumming his guitar because I was a part-time hippie when I was psychiatric resident. You're tuning right in. And the Beatles never showed up there, but
yeah.
the Jefferson Airplane had a house right off Haight Street or on Haight Street. There was a lot of that going on that you are just now describing, and I'm glad to say that I was there, and just even hearing what you're doing, my energy and imagining, because we're talking about stories. We're talking what I call mind movies. You're talking about them too, or I call them expectation videos. But we're running movies with each other,
Yeah.
where you're in my movie, I'm in your movie, and
Yeah.
we're different. But in this case, uh, our avatars overlapping more than usually happens with me when I'm talking with someone, because I can feel your heart, I can feel your love, I can feel your excitement, I can feel your immersion in the greater oneness that's around us. And you're just kind of trying to ride your motorcycle through all of this and stay balanced and keep moving. And I know what that's like because I had a BSA 500 board out to 650 when I was in San Francisco, and I almost got killed riding
Ooh,
one of them.
yeah.
I missed a car coming the other direction by this much.
Ooh,
Uh, but it
wow.
was a near death, you learn from those things. You got to be careful about stuff. So I can see you riding a motorcycle kind of the way I was, uh, into the oneness, into the wonder, into the mystic, as Van Morrison liked to be able
Right.
to say. You're riding into the mystic, and I am too. And I'm doing it from this chair right here. This
Hmm.
is where I do it from. I'm not out there that much. We have dance here.
Yeah.
And dance is one of the most educational places for me to learn about interpersonal energy.
Yeah.
And and that's part of what I'm asking about, because competition and all kinds of stuff happens at dance. When you get 250 people together, there's going to be a lot of energy exchange and a lot of different things happening that people won't understand.
Yeah.
And so that becomes a place for me to wonder how you manage that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great question. And it's like, I can only take so much credit for just,
And you can, and I'm not trying to say it's all you, because this isn't all you, because there are entities working through you. There's breadcrumbs bouncing around you.
yeah,
That it's not really you. But one of the problems we got with this thing is that you're both you and not you. You're both yourself and you're part of something bigger. And
yeah,
we've got to go back and forth between those two. I'm Brandon.
yeah, right,
Yeah, I'm Brandon.
right.
I've got to go exercise, and I got to eat the right stuff, and I got to get to sleep, and I better not
Yeah,
smoke any weed right now, but
yeah,
maybe I can do it later. I mean,
right.
those are decisions Brandon has to make. That's mostly you. And there is an agency, a responsibility that each of us has to a you. And so I have trouble with this when other people want to give other people credit or other things credit, because the other things deserve the credit, and
Yeah.
we need to be able to look at them. But I'm just looking at you, baby. I'm saying, hey, I'm talking to you. I'm saying,
Yeah.
Brandon, and your agency, man. I'm saying, Brandon, you're in the middle of that. You've helped. You've been a vehicle, however words you want to say, for this happening. It's all part of the flow, and you're saying, okay, yes to this and no to that. You're saying that. There's a you that we have to recognize that's so important. That's also a much, there's something much more expansive that you're connected to.
Yeah.
But I'm asking you go to the Mystic Manor and weird stuff happens. Somebody comes up to you and said, hey, Brandon, you see what's happening over there? Well,
Yeah.
Brandon's got to call on his friends and maybe do something about it. And that's kind of
Yeah.
what I'm asking about.
Yeah. 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 You know, um, I love you. I love the depth of your questions. They're great. Um,
You're welcome.
so I I think that the thing that I've done that is the most important piece is continuing to work on myself and to analyze myself and to take feedback. I have a partner who's called, the last 5 years, my most recent partner and longest running partner in my life, she has forced me to look at my shadow more than anyone else. And so as I've continued to, instead of in my ego, Brandon, why I'm right or not looking at it, I continue to self-analyze and then make adjustments, as necessary. And I think as I've continued to do that, the thing that's the most beneficial when you start talking about the broader community and how I deal with it, well, that which is like unto itself is drawn. So I am attracting people who are perfectly imperfect and they may act a fool or out of alignment in a certain moment at one of these gatherings, for example, where we have like some sort of tension or what have you. And the thing that I notice is they all have that piece of them activated too. Like they're willing to take feedback and maybe look at themselves if they,
That's so important that they're willing to take the feedback.
it's everything.
Because you're reminding me, Brandon, of a guy at dance who is a big boundary breaker.
Yeah.
He has made many women feel very uncomfortable,
Yeah.
including me. He just came right up to me and sat right next to me and started touching me, and I didn't know him.
Yeah.
And
Right.
when he shows up, and I'm glad when he doesn't, but when he shows up, I say more and more that he is a shadow of me.
Great. Right. Yeah. And I think you being able to observe that and see that. And, one of the things, so this to go a little further with your answer, that me and my partner, we're together for a reason. There's a lot of overlap in how we show up in the world. I feel in some sense as I'm a Leo, and both my parents are Leos, and it's like a lot of that energy. And you think of the female lion goes out, and the male lion's sitting back a little bit, and she's like that for me. And, she is like, I always jokingly say she's the boss. I just work here. And she's a speech therapist originally as well, and so she's just very communicative and intelligent, and so she'll a lot of times, um, she'll a lot of times engage with, both of us will say, okay, we'll talk about it. Say there's someone in the community who's making people uncomfortable. As an example, there's the guy who recently, it's like, oh, he's shown up a few times. Oh, now he's trying to get into our new membership. We don't, that's not really the energy. Most people would just ignore him, or, try and, like, they don't want conflict. We will go and say, yeah, the universe is prompting me to do the thing, and have the hard talk with them. And how can I do it as graciously and kindly as possible with the intent of being helpful? So we'll have those sorts of conversations, the tough talk with that guy. We'd say, hey, can I offer a reflection to you? Here's how it's impacting those around you, and maybe you're not seeing it. And let me, it's obviously you want to have a positive effect, so you don't want it to be like the, you're wrong and I'm right energy. But having the tough talks is something that we both have realized is necessary, as opposed to, we have a society where avoidance is like, avoid conflict avoidance at all costs, and it's like, you're not helping someone if you're not willing to offer them a perspective and feedback. And sometimes that's uncomfortable. And so I think I've gotten to be where I'm more comfortable with doing that than maybe most people, and then receiving it too, which can be challenging for me. And I'm here for it. And even if I react in the moment, which happens sometimes, I then, once I sit with it, it's like, okay, hold on, let me, there was really something to that. And so
Now that is a vital answer. I've done that with this guy somewhat, trying
mhm,
to tell him something, and he's very dense.
yeah,
And I won't go through that part of it, but you're encouraging me by my now identifying, as you are allowing me to do, with the feeling you have as you do this, as you and your partner were doing this. I like the feeling that you are conveying to me about the love and groundedness that you and your partner feel. It's also very nice to have a two-on-one,
it,
the two of you
yeah.
doing it together. It's a
Yeah, I
big
send in
help.
the troops a lot of times, like, okay, and she's a lot prettier than me, so that always helps to
It
take a
always
little
helps.
bite off.
And I mean, there's a lot of
Yeah.
having the troops involved. It's still, what you and she are doing is so essential to the future. Now, let me describe to you more clearly what I'm doing, and seeing if there's something that interests you in what I am doing. I am trying to be able to identify, um, a collective human organism, that we are all in this together. that each of us
Yeah.
are cells in this collective human organism. And
Yeah.
each of us has our own special capacity. And we have to, each of us, as Ram Dass was trying to say, develop your own, but recognizing not just you spiritually, but recognize you operationally here on Earth. How
Yeah.
is it that you can help us Earthlings develop some coherence as a being? But what I'm addressing you mostly about, Brandon, is that you are continuing to develop your ability to observe yourself. I call it your self-observer.
Mm.
And your self-observer is clearly been well exercised over the years. Uh, been knocked around a lot to have to look at yourself, and your partner makes you do it when you don't even want to, but you better do it. So you go pop up into this self-observer, and you look at the patterns in yourself that she's trying to draw your attention to.
Yeah.
Well, I think there is also an observer of the self-observer, a
Mm.
second observer, or a meta-observer.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of that?
I think you're spot on. I think it's hard to wrap our human mind around this idea of uh, source being infinite in all directions. Right? So
Oh, that's a tough one. It's a
it's
tough
a
one.
tough one. I mean, so but it's back to this 1728 idea we talked about earlier concept. You know, well, if my human is down in the 1728 of us versions, and then but oh, above that is a soul, but then that's connected to 12 other souls, but then above that is 12 over souls that it's connected to. Well, but above that is, on and on it goes,
Well, if you'll excuse me on this, I think that's a distraction.
yeah.
Uh, I think it's useful for you, but it's a
Mm-hmm.
distraction from what you can do to help humanity at this time,
Mm.
because this is the one we got here.
Yep,
Of the
that's right.
1728, we got this BBBB thing going on here. It's
Yeah.
Brandon. You got the Mystic Mansion going. You got the spouse. You got July 28th. This is Brandon number
Right.
174 or something.
Yeah,
It's
whatever it
like,
is.
but whatever it is, that's what we got here. And that
Yeah.
I would rather, and this is where I'm thinking, and then just, I mean, you got to do what you're going to do, but I'd rather have you here with your feet planted on earth, grounded, recognizing what I think is uh, in what a lot of people think is like an ensuing disaster that human beings are creating for ourselves, and have you with the roles that you are already doing, remarkably wonderful things you are doing with heart and mind and body and action. I'm asking you, that's who I'm talking with, not the one out of 1728. I'm
Yeah.
talking to this. Hey, I'm talking to you, buddy. I mean, that's what I'm talking about. So with you right here, I'm asking you about the second self-observer only just to see how you responded, and you just did. But what
Hmm.
I'm trying to organize and be part of, that I seem to be called by what I'm doing to do, is to develop a collection of people who are very good at self-observation, who
Hmm.
then can join and become a self-observer of the collective human organism.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, it's that know thyself, right? And the more you can step back and look and observe yourself, the more you can see it. You know, a lot of times, I think for all of us, we can't see the forest for the trees because we're so zoomed in on ourselves, and I think it is and I had many years where it's like, lots of energy, that can cut in both ways, uh, and it's been such a daily conscious effort to slow down, look at myself, look at my words, as opposed to letting like all this fire come up, in a moment of passion, and maybe I say something I regret or what have you. So it's really been, um, you know, a daily conscious effort. And, I think what's really important with it too is it's really easy when you understand, you know, like I said earlier, Mike Tyson said it well. Everyone's got a plan till you get punched in the face, and you get punched in the face, and then you react in a way that you're maybe not proud of. It's really easy to then compound that by observing yourself in a judgmental, negative way. And I think the most important thing is to give yourself grace. You talk about dancing. You don't dance to get to a certain place on the dance floor, right? You don't listen to a song to get to the final note. The journey is the goal. And so if you get the aim is to get a little bit better every day, and the more gentle you can be with yourself when you maybe observe you didn't ace the test, maybe. Don't worry, you're going to get another chance. The universe will bring it back around for you to hone and sharpen your axe, so to speak. And I think a lot of people get caught up once they become aware enough to then see, oh, I'm not doing that well. I didn't do that well. Now I'm going to beat myself up for that. And then that keeps you even further stuck, right? So I think it's really important to give yourself as much grace as possible as you start on this observing path. You've stepped into no longer just looking down at the ground. You're starting to look up a little bit, and you're seeing, oh, I could get this a lot better. And then you now get sensitive to how well you're performing, and that can become a barrier. So every moment is another chance to turn it all around. The best time to have done something that you should have done is 10 years ago. The second best time is now, right? So
And the third best is to remember what you should have done the next time it comes
right.
up, which
Right.
want to be able to do. One of the things that you mentioned, Brandon, is so important is judgment. And not just judgment of self, but judgments of others.
Yeah.
And I hear many people saying, don't judge. And that's not right. You've got to make some judgments, but there are ones that you shouldn't make, and you're talking about some of the ones you shouldn't. What are good times to judge?
Yeah. That's a very good point. I'm glad you brought it up. Judging myself um, as much as I can without all the story around it, or the grade. It's okay to maybe grade your performance and so forth, in a healthy way. A healthy sense of judgment is good. It's self-awareness. It's where it gets negative is when it becomes, oh, you got it wrong, and therefore you're less than, you're not worthy, you are an idiot, all that self-deprecation can come in if you're not careful. Instead, the more you can make it unemotional, the better. And so it's feedback, right? It's just telling me what I need to know in order to know where I'm going next. I think of a lot of people with relationships or dating. They get caught up on, this person did this or that, and they should have. Don't should on yourself. There is no. It's information. What if you take it as a data point? If I hit you in the face, right? You could say, oh my gosh, Brandon abused me, and he's, and really a lot of emotion and story and energy around it that really becomes, I am a victim of his abuse, and I am the survivor of abuse, and all the, a lot of energy tied up in all that. Or what if it was, once upon a time, there was a fist that struck my face. It stung slightly. The universe moved, and I got hit by the branch as I walked through the tree. That's a very different perspective on it than all the story that maybe can be extremely limiting, right? And so I think that is important to look at it as like, oh, there is a happening, and this is how I performed, and I know why I performed that way. And maybe I'm a little disappointed with myself, but I'm not going to now turn myself into self-deprecating, charged with all these titles and stories that actually bind me to more limit and lack, right? And so I think that's the nuance of it. How do you make it? It's feedback. It's telling me what I need to know. Oh, I see where I could have done that better. That I've got the information, that I don't want to walk in the way of that person's fist anymore. Cool. And I think that's helpful when you can take as much emotional charge out of it
Mm-hmm.
just, look at it as, I'm learning, I'm testing.
Yeah, that it sounds right, and I very much respect your storytelling about stories.
Yeah. I often say the only thing I'm good at is making up good stories about myself. Like it's
Yeah.
literally like,
Well, you're good at talking about making up stories about yourself as well as about other people, and you're in Hollywood, or at least near Hollywood, so you know about movies. And I've been with this mind movie thing for a long time, and expectations videos for a long time. We make these movies, and we have played a very fine duo here today,
mm,
Brian, as Brandon, as we come to the we used to be my old name, Brian, as we come to having to wrap this up. And I very much appreciate being able to be a duo with you in the Mystic Manor, which
yeah.
I feel like I've had a little bit of a feel for,
Oh,
as
I
well
love
as
that.
many other,
I,
as
I
well
look
as
forward to you having it in 3D, and as long as you come, when you come here, you mind your mystic manners, we'll be good. And if we have time, speaking of movies, I have a really fun, relatively recent, um, beyond synchronicity, a transmission across the veil that led to something in real life that was really powerful, that ties into the movies. If we
well
have
go
time,
well go ahead. We don't have time, but go ahead anyway.
do it. We'll make time. We're masters of time and space
Oh,
anyway.
yes.
So, um, okay, I'll try and be concise as I can, which can be a challenge for me. A few months ago, I was in the dream state, and my grandfather showed up, and I was in grandmother, my mom's parents, and I was very excited in the dream because I um I was very excited because it was like, oh, I broke through there, because they passed both at one in the 80s, one in the 90s. And I'm like, oh, wow, I've got them on the line, is what it felt like. Right. And so my grandfather, Joe, and my grandmother, we called Moo, like a cow. And so they're both there. And I'm talking to Joe, and Joe says, Brandon, I need you to meet my friend from World War II, Peter Finch. Now, I never heard this name. I didn't know who this was. And my grandfather, he was at Pearl Harbor. He was on the Utah, the first ship to get hit by the kamikazes. And, so he was truly surprised. It still sunk there in the harbor. And he jumped and swam. Luckily for me, he survived. But a lot of people there, didn't. And so instantly, when I woke up out of the dream, you got to write this down: Peter Finch, World War II. And I'm thinking maybe it's his friend who, he had a friend that died that was next to him. And maybe that's it, or maybe it's just my dream and this isn't even a real person. So the next day, I get up and I search Peter Finch. First thing that comes up is a famous actor from the 70s, the first to win an Oscar after he passed, for a movie called The Network. I didn't know any of this, and so I'm like, oh my gosh, Peter Finch is a real person. He's also a famous actor. My son Bradley um, had predictions from a medium when he was younger that he was going to be this huge actor. And he's been in like 50, he's in Boston right now on a film set. He's been in 50 productions in the last few years. He's really doing the thing. Won best actor in an independent film in the LA Film Awards recently. And
Wow, wow, wow,
yeah, he's
wow.
very talented and artist. He's very in it for the right reasons, not fame, and he loves the art of film. And so I'm thinking, oh my gosh, Peter Finch is a real person, and it must be connected to Bradley in some way because it's acting thing, right? And then as I'm reading his Wikipedia further down, after all his acting accolades, it's he was also known for being in a famous battle in World War II as a gunner in the Battle of Darwin. And I'm like, wow, he's real. I can tie him into my life. And he was a gunner in World War II. My grandfather was right. And so later that day, I'm going to um, I'm going to play tennis with a friend, and my son Bradley will sometimes, hey, Dad, can you help me? Read lines for he'll do like self tapes, and he's got to have someone read opposite lines. Tomorrow, usually it's like gives me notice, and he doesn't tell me what it's about. I've got a few submissions. Can you help me tomorrow for an hour? This one came across as I'm walking out the door to tennis. Hey, Dad, it's a last minute request, and I got to turn it in within an hour. It's for a World War II pilot. I'm like, get out of here. Okay, yes, I will cancel. Sorry, friend. I know you're en route to tennis, but it's very clear I'm supposed to do this with him. I go, I'm reading his lines opposite him, and he's like a young cadet from Kentucky or something. And I was like, hey, Kentucky, how about I just stand behind you and say moo? Which was my grandmother that was with my grandfather. So, I'm like, wow. He submits it. Next day, he hears back. Usually it's weeks and, months. Next day, he hears back. 2 days later, he's on set as a gunner in the trenches in a World War II pilot for a new show. And I'm just like, wow, I've never had information come across the veil. I would not have canceled my plans had it not been for the dream. And so they knew we need to make sure Brandon doesn't go to tennis because my son just put together his new acting reel a couple of weeks ago. If you search Bradley Beachum dramatic reel on YouTube, you can see the clip of him in the trenches as a gunner, and he's talking to a guy about cows. So, so for a meaningful coincidence, I'll leave that one as a fun story for you.
That is a beauty, Brandon, and a wonderful place for us to end. Thanks very much. Thanks very much.
So much for having me. You are such a wonderful reflection.
You're welcome.
This psychosphere is our mental atmosphere, like a hologram of cosmic consciousness.